Old friends, new friends, everyone in between. What is going on, everyone? How you doing? Welcome to episode 1051, Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching, for listening. I appreciate you very much. Big shout out to today's sponsor, Suddy Reds, 1841 Aber Road, just down the way from Highmark Stadium, which is coming along, by the way. Seen some seats that are going in the stadium. Seen a couple videos. Pretty cool stuff. I am joined right now for not the first time on the show, but the first time recording this with a different platform. So I'm a little bit nervous. I'll get into that in a second. But my guy, Chris Ostrander from Two in the Box and also the Instigator podcast. What's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
Not too bad. How you been?
Nervous. I get nervous when anything is new to me. I've been using StreamYard for a couple of years now for videos, and it's just been so erratic, especially over the last 6 months or so. It's just been really frustrating. So I'm trying Riverside for the first time today. Hopefully this goes well. I am recording this into a mixer as well. But as always, man, I appreciate having you on. I've got a couple Bills things for you, and I want to dive into the Sabres. And I kind of want to focus a little bit on Terry Pegula, because it just feels to me right now, like the way he's perceived and the way he operates, it just feels like he's the same person, but he's like two different owners. Like with the Bills and the Sabres, the way things are operated, it just feels so different. I'm going to get into that in a couple seconds. Before that, though, let me ask you this, Chris. I know you're a Buffalo guy outside of just sports. Like you like talking and writing about things going on in the city. This is technically not Buffalo, but I need to ask you this. I just spent a couple days in Ellicottville. Bunch of buddies of mine. We got a chalet. A good friend came in from Texas, and I had a really good time. Have you been to Ellicottville before?
I have, yeah. I love going down there.
What are your thoughts on there? Because by the time I left there on Saturday, I spent 3 days there. 3 days, 3 nights. It's not my first time there. I've been there before. But as I'm just walking around and, there's a handful of bars in town and, a brewery, a couple dives, a lot of nice little shops, just the scenery, obviously skiing in the winter, golf courses, a couple golf courses there. I found myself saying, man, this is a place that I could see myself living in. And I'm not usually like that. I'm a city slicker, you know what I mean? And this is kind of a little more, I don't say country, but it's certainly different, man. What are your thoughts on a place like Ellicottville? Like, have you enjoyed your time when you go up there or down there?
Oh, yeah. It's right up my alley. So my sister and brother-in-law actually have a place down there that they rent out in the winter and then in the summer too. But so we've been down there with them a little bit. But I'm a mountain biker. So
Okay.
Halamont has like a lift service mountain bike trails. There's like 30 or 40 miles of trails down there. So I'll go down and ride, go get a taco at the place in the village, maybe a beer, whatever. It's perfect. That place is awesome.
Yeah, it is. I really enjoy myself. I could totally see myself wanting to live in a place like that. All right, so let's get into a couple things. Before the bill, I guess I could call this a little bit of breaking news of sorts. I mean, if you are a football fan, surely you've watched through the years Rich Eisen, and I just saw news break on Twitter here as we record this Monday around lunchtime now that Rich Eisen is returning to ESPN after 20 years, but he's not leaving the NFL network either. This is all per reporting from Andrew Marchand from The Athletic, great reporter over there. But apparently now the Rich Eisen show is coming to ESPN, kind of like the Pat McAfee show there right now, where he'll own the content. ESPN owns like the licensing and things like that, and it's kind of like one of those direct ESPN to consumer things, because now more and more they're trying to market to people who may not want cable, who don't get cable, but they'll still subscribe specifically to like ESPN, you know what I mean, or ESPN Plus or whatever you have it. So he's coming to ESPN. He's still going to be, from what the report said, remaining at NFL Network, like for their game day coverage, and he announces a couple games too here and there. What are your thoughts on that, man? It's a big deal. I'm a big Rich Eisen fan, arguably the most popular, certainly on the football side, sportscasters out there nowadays, or has been for a while. Are you a Rich Eisen guy? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think he does a really nice job. I get clips of his show now and then too, and I
Yeah.
think he's a good interviewer. Him going back to ESPN harkens back to like that golden era of him, Patrick Olbermann, Stuart Scott.
Yeah.
Like that was such a great lineup. Sports Center was like in its heyday. So that's what I think of first when I think of Eisen. And even when he first left, was it 2000? What, like 2001,
Yeah.
2002 maybe? Like that was such a big deal for me at the time because I'm still in high school. I'm like, oh man, I loved watching Sports Center in the morning. And so you lose a guy like that to a different job. It's kind of wild to think that he's going to go back. It is also interesting, I think, in a sense that like you get the McAfee show, which is a little more locker room talk, irreverent kind of
Edgy. Sure.
goofiness. Yeah, and then Eisen's a little more straight laced, so that'll be a nice juxtaposition.
Him coming back just kind of, you just hit on it. It takes me to the golden age, I feel like, of ESPN. It used to feel like there was a time where ESPN was must watch. Like I had to watch ESPN. I felt like I was missing out if I wasn't. Obviously, mainly the Sports Center shows, all the various Sports Center shows, or the NFL Countdown and things like that. It's just so different now, and it's just it's a hot, all TV, I guess, nowadays is pretty much hot take machines. You know what I mean? They're just, but I really like his show a lot, so that's cool. It's cool, and if you are, still an NFL Network guy, you're not losing him either. It's not like he's coming to ESPN and completely leaving the NFL Network. So anyway, I thought that was cool. Some pretty interesting news here on a late Monday morning. As of this recording, anyway, and I say that because who the hell knows by the time Tuesday morning rolls around what news might be out there in regards to the Bills' schedule, but there's no official schedule announcements for the Buffalo Bills. The schedule will be official on Wednesday night, and I'm quite sure we'll hear most, if not all, of that schedule come out probably well in advance of that. As we get close to the schedule being unveiled, we already know who they're playing, obviously. That's, a year-to-year thing. We know that at a time. But there are a couple things on the schedule that you're hoping to see, like that you're looking to see. Like if things went the way you'd like them to go for the Bills, maybe it's a bye week later, maybe it's a specific primetime game or some kind of stretch or something like that, or a holiday game, things like that. What is there anything that like you're hoping to see specifically when it comes to this Bills schedule?
Yeah, I think I'm always torn on whether I want to see Miami come to Buffalo in December or if you want Buffalo to go to Miami in December when it's not going to be a million degrees. But I was hoping they might have gotten picked for the Pittsburgh Ireland game.
Yeah,
I think it'd been cool if they had gotten selected for that. I don't know. That's out of the question now, right?
I don't think it's out of the question.
Okay.
There's been a rumor that it's going to be Minnesota. It could be. I think I saw that Minnesota, if they were to play in Ireland, it would be back-to-back where they're overseas. And I think the Jets might be playing back-to-back too. It's probable that the Bills aren't playing in Ireland, but I haven't heard, I don't want to say credible because I don't know what's credible and what's not anymore when it comes to schedule leaks. But the word on the street, I thought, all right, so here's what I will say. I was told that there was a good chance that the Bills were going to be playing in Ireland, but this was a handful of weeks ago. Nobody knew for sure, but since then it has been, I guess we could say, widely rumored now that it won't be the Bills. So I don't know for sure. Maybe by the time people hear this, we'll have a definitive answer. But so you would have liked to see him playing in Ireland?
Yeah, I got to go to the first London game, so it was 2015.
Oh, did you really?
I think it would have been. Yeah, it was great. Such a good time. And I would have loved to have gone to the last one, just didn't work out. We didn't have kids in 2015. We got 2 kids now. So that messed it up. But it's a great time, I think, to be able to go travel, see your team play, go overseas, see a new city, and they're playing in Dublin, right? So I think Dublin's a really cool town too. So I think it would have been cool, special for Bills fans to be able to experience that. But other than that, I want to see some primetime games. We were starved of primetime games for 20 years there, and any chance we get to play on Sunday and Monday night I'm all about that. So
yeah, well, I'm not. I've said this before, and I know it's not possible, and I sound like an old grumpy hater, but I give me 17 Sunday 1 p.m. games, and I would be a happy guy. I know that's not going to happen, nor should it, because you have not only a team that's one of the best teams in the NFL, not only a team that is one of the biggest draws in the NFL in terms of ratings when they play, but now you have a quarterback, an NFL MVP in Josh Allen, who is without question one of the 2 or 3 most recognizable. He's one of the faces now. He's not just the face of the Buffalo Bills anymore. Josh Allen is one of the very few faces of the entire NFL. So to get him in front of, a national audience in prime time, I totally understand that. And I get it too. There's people who complain about the schedule. Like, who cares? You already know who they're going to play. But you just brought up a great point that I don't think enough people think about. Overseas games or just road games in general. If you're a guy or if you're a girl who likes to travel and go watch the Bills, you like to go to a road game every year and you plan around it for a vacation, this is where you're going to find out and you start to make some arrangements. To your point, will the Bills play, in Miami in September or early October? Hopefully not, but they've done it before. They played in week 3 a couple of seasons ago when it was 10,000 degrees out. Last year, wasn't it last year? Well, it was last year. Didn't they play in Miami week 2 or 3, something like that? But it was a Thursday night game. I think it was week 2, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. They played Arizona at 1 p.m. on Sunday to open the season, and then they went to Miami in week 2 on Thursday night. And obviously, nighttime, the temperature was far more manageable, and the Bills kind of dominated that game. They won by, I think 3 scores or something like that. So, yeah, so last year they played in Miami early. Maybe if they switch it up, you could get a later game. I know a lot of fans like that. It feels to me like the only potential Bills game, if it's not, officially that they're not playing, would be in Ireland, because all the London games, the leagues have those kind of filled up, and it's unofficial, but there's reports that the Chiefs are playing the Chargers in Brazil Friday night, week 1. The only thing that's been official, by the way, that the league announced was Dallas is opening up the season at Philly on Thursday night, which is a little bit surprising because they have Washington, who they played in the championship, or Detroit, who's a big draw and a very good team as well, but they went with Dallas. Let me throw this out there for you as a scenario. What do you think of this? The Bills, is the last season at Highmark Stadium. Week 17 is the week of Christmas. And then the week 18 is the finale. How about the Bills closing out the regular season and the entire era of the regular season, at least anyway, at Highmark Stadium with a home game, week 17 on Christmas, which would be Thursday, the 25th. There's going to be 3 games on Christmas. I think 2 are on Netflix, 1 on Amazon Prime. But what would you think of that? If the Bills, how would you feel if you woke up on Christmas morning and knew that the Bills had a game on a Thursday on Christmas? Are you for that, or are you like, oh, hell no?
All right, what time are they playing?
Well, ideally, a primetime game would be really nice. Okay. If it's a home game and it's the last game ever at Highmark Stadium, at least regular season game, I would assume the league would say primetime. So let's go primetime, Buffalo Bills, Christmas night at home. Final regular 100%. Season game ever.
Yeah, I would sign up for that in a heartbeat. I think that'd be really cool. I think you have a chance for also like kind of the storybook ending of maybe get a little snow in the air. Final home game.
Yeah.
Final regular season home game, little snow falling, depending who you're playing. Maybe get an old rival like Miami, right? Get them in town. I think that'd be a really nice way to close it out.
Yeah.
And obviously, we'll see how the playoffs go, of course. But yeah, from a regular season perspective, that'd be cool.
Look, it might sound really dumb 12 hours from now when we find out that it's not happening. I just like the thought of it. It feels really cool. What a hell of a Christmas party that would be, too. Obviously, in Western New York, to have the Bills play their final regular season home game at home. Kids, life happens, so who knows if you'll get an opportunity to go to a road game this year. But if you're going to flirt with wanting to go to a road game this year, do you know where it would be?
I don't think so. I'm torn on that. I haven't been to many at NFL stadiums, so I mean anyone would be a check off the list, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's hard to say. I would say I'd probably try to lean towards the fall.
Yeah.
I'd want to go when it's nice out. Try to, because especially if you're going to a city where like let's say you're in Pittsburgh, just for example,
Hmm.
and Pittsburgh's a cool city to go visit. The stadiums are all really close together. Like you can go if it's nice out. It's a nice September weekend or October weekend.
Yeah.
You can really enjoy the city instead of if you were going to Pittsburgh in December, January, and it's 5 degrees outside. It's not quite as fun. So
True.
yeah, I don't know if I'd have it on this year's schedule. I'm not sure. That's not what I've thought too hard about.
It's the road, so the home schedule is just so much more appealing in terms of opponents. Like they're playing Kansas City at home, they're playing Baltimore at home, they're playing Cincinnati at home, they're playing Philly at home. Elite teams around the league, which if you got to play them, it's better to play them at home. Advantage Buffalo, tough schedule on the home side. The road side's not as appealing, but if you're looking at quick trips, financial, reasons, then Pittsburgh and Cleveland are both road games that are relatively, quick drives.
Mhm.
Or if you're looking to do something different and just go another town, not necessarily to watch the team, but Carolina, they're in Carolina. It'd be fun to go to Charlotte for a weekend or Atlanta, which Atlanta's got a fun football team and a good young quarterback. That would be potentially an appealing game as well. I care about none of that really because I don't think I'm going to any road game either. I'm just being honest with you. I don't even go to the home games. I watch them on TV, and I like for them to be early so I got time to prep to do a live show right after. But I kind of just, to me, like I said, if they played on Christmas, that'd be pretty cool. But aside from that, just I care about when they have their bye. You know what I mean? Like I hope it comes at a good time. And, sometimes you get screwed with the schedule. Like who's coming off the bye when they're playing the Bills? Who's got an extra week of rest or extra couple days of rest? Those are the little things about the schedule that ultimately mean a lot. Moving past that, before we take a break and get into the Sabres and more specifically Terry Pegula as well, I wanted to ask you this. I talked about this a little bit with Joe from Queens on the show yesterday. With Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, look, they're not going anywhere now, and I don't think they're going to go anywhere anytime soon, regardless of how the team performs. But how important of a year do you think this is for Brandon Beane, and even more specifically, Sean McDermott? Because you are moving into a new stadium, and this team has performed well. They've won 5 straight divisional titles. They've won at least a playoff game in every single year, too. So it's not like they've been one and done, but they hit a wall. With the exception of Cincinnati in 2022, that wall has been the Kansas City Chiefs now 3 of the last 4 years. If this team falls short again this year, and I don't think there were a lot of expectations last year because they got rid of so many core guys and almost felt like they were playing with house money last year and the Bills got to the AFC Championship game. At least that's the way it felt if we would have talked about it in May. If the Bills get this far, it's going to feel like they're playing with house money. I don't think that's the case this year. If this team falls short again, like say they lose in the divisional round to Kansas City, whoever, I guess it don't even matter. Should Sean McDermott's job and certainly his reputation at that point be in trouble? Will you start to really, truly feel that this is as far as a Sean McDermott head coach team is going to get you? And are you getting to the point where you feel like you're in danger of wasting the best years of Josh Allen getting stuck at a certain point? Like, how important do you think this year is to Sean McDermott for any reason that you want to frame it?
I think it matters with respect to the fan narrative and probably the media narrative.
Mm-hmm.
It strikes, if I can try to read the tea leaves, Terry Pegula doesn't strike me as a guy who would fire any coach, but let alone McDermott, who's had the success he's had. If I had to guess, I think that Pegula is a type of owner who thinks if we just keep pushing at this, if we keep knocking on the door, we're going to get through. And I think that would indicate that McDermott and Beane are safe for as long as they care to be. Um, but as for the fans, as for media, I do think, yeah, if you have another letdown, divisional round, AFC Championship, whatever it may be, and if it's the same relative storyline, the defense maybe isn't strong enough. The offense is having to carry the load, whatever it might be. Even if it's the other side, like if Allen's just underwater and his weapons aren't good enough, then I do think you're going to hear a lot more calls for the staff from fans and
Yeah.
from media. But I don't think Terry Pegula is going to go along with it. That's my take on it.
I am in full agreement with you, and I kind of feel like when it comes to Terry, and we're going to talk about him after this break too, more specifically, but when it comes to the Bills, it feels like the organizational philosophy is, I don't want to say that they're not all in, but they're trying to win a championship. Okay. I don't think there's any question about that, but I think their mindset is, to your point, we're not going to go all in and mortgage the future and not be good in future years, but we're going to be good enough that we can keep knocking on the door each year. And at some point, they got to answer. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like that is the point with him. And I agree with what you said in terms of the media and especially the fan narrative. The fan narrative is already pretty bad when it comes to Sean. Have you noticed, we talked about this a little bit yesterday too, like, have you noticed a change in Sean McDermott personally, like in personality wise? Like, I know he just did a 40-minute sit down with Sal Capaccio and Matt Bove on their Always Sunny or Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast just last week. Like that, even though it's this time of year and there's not a lot going on, it's like that shit that Sean never would have done, it felt like 2 years ago. He's been much more engaging with speaking to the media, and I feel like for the most part, a little more open and honest, and I think you've kind of let his personality has kind of come through a little bit more over the last maybe year or so. Not coincidentally, I'm sure, with the article that Tyler posted about him, the series that Tyler did on him, I think that might have unleashed a change in Sean McDermott. Have you kind of felt that?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think you absolutely trace it back to Tyler's article.
Sure.
His article, and specifically the anecdote about the 9/11 hijackers. He owned it too, right? Like he could have very easily been like, no, that was a misunderstanding. Like he was very clear that like, yeah, no, that's what I did. And it wasn't a good reference to make, obviously, but the line in the sand that you can look at how he carried himself before and after that article, I think is night and day. And I'm sure he's better for it. Maybe he's more comfortable even too. I do think that he is far more comfortable in his skin, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe he's let his guard down a little bit more, and he comes across as a more relaxed kind of guy. I think before he was very like super intense, right? And his sole focus was, winning football games. And not that it isn't now, but he's definitely allowed himself to loosen up a little bit and show a little more personality, which I think is important. I think that's really, really valuable.
It's made him more likable. I think it's humanized him a little bit more. But at the end of the day, you got to win. And I feel like his job's not in jeopardy. I agree with you, but I think his reputation is certainly in Buffalo and maybe around the league too, as well. Obviously, we'll see. Let's take a quick break, come back on the other side, and I want to get into some Sabre stuff, but I also want to talk about Terry Pegula because I can't get over how it feels to me. The way he operates these two organizations just feel night and day different. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. More coming up with Chris Ostrander. Back here with Chris Ostrander from Two in the Box, who, by the way, really good blog post that I read recently about Eric Stahl. I want to get into that in just a few minutes. But so when it comes to Terry Pegula, why does it feel like Terry Pegula, the hockey owner of the Buffalo Sabres, is so different than Terry Pegula, the Buffalo Bills owner? The Sabres, very well documented, haven't spent to the salary cap or the ceiling at any point of Kevin Adams' tenure here. And as much as we like to get on Kevin Adams, and there's a lot of reasons to, you've heard me do it. We've talked about Kevin Adams plenty when you've been on the show with me, but the money is a factor. The spending's been a factor as well. The Sabres have been at least $6 million with cap space unspent in the past 5 seasons, which is the only team in the NHL, Chris, that has done that. And I was looking up cap numbers from The Athletic before this chat with you today. Per The Athletic, the cap ceiling rises from $88 to $95.5 million this year, then up to $104 million in 2026, 2027, and then up to $113 0.5 million in 2027, 2028. Can you come up with a reason for me why the Sabres just don't seem to spend? Terry Pegula is a hockey guy. I think he actually likes the Sabres more than he likes the Buffalo Bills. I think he's a bigger Sabres fan than a Bills fan. But like, money never seems to be an issue when it comes to player spending with the Buffalo Bills. They're always around the salary cap, spending up to it every year. Whereas the Sabres, several $1 million every year under it, and just other things. Scouting department, coaching, just lots of things when it comes to spending. But why is it so different to you? What's your take on why Terry Pegula, the hockey owner and the football owner, so radically different?
At the end of the day, it's just the winning, right? The Sabres haven't won much at all for 10 years, 15.
Mm.
Um,
I was gonna say, what? 10.
yeah. And the Bills have been successful since Allen showed up, right? So on the face of it, you have a hockey team that is totally hapless, rudderless. Nothing they do ever seems to go right, and the fans are aware of it. And then you look at the Bills, and they have a nuclear warhead playing quarterback, and they win the division every year, and it's all hunky dory. So that's the right on the surface level, that's the winner, right? That's the thing that most people are going to pay attention to, even the most casual fans, whether in Buffalo or elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But you bring up the spending thing, and I just can't put my finger on it. They went into COVID really with their tail between their legs. The rebuild that they had triggered to build around Eichel and Reinhart was on its last legs, and then you have a half canceled season, no fans in the stands for the following year, and so they were losing a lot of money. I'm sure most of the teams were, and you then also had the divestiture from like 716. They got out from the draft house as well after they had started to really develop a nice little uh, arena district, if you will. And so all of these things, I think a lot of it traces back to COVID. Why he hasn't changed course and started spending again like he did early in his ownership, because if you look back to 2012, I think it was, they went and convinced Robin Regeer to waive his no trade clause. They went and took a helicopter to his house in Alberta, and they convinced him to do it on the spot, face to face. And I struggle to imagine that he would want to send a plane for a draft pick now. You know what I mean? He'd be like, "You can fly commercial." Um, so there is a stark difference between Terry Pegula, the Sabres owner, February 2011, and the owner that you're seeing today. I have to think it's COVID and just the general lack of gate receipts. And then on top of that, he's on the hook for a big ticket for that stadium. And so is he just worried about what his fortune is? Is he a lot of people have argued that he's probably not like liquid. He's worth a lot of money, but is it all in holdings? Does he not have a lot of cash in the bank? I'm sure that could be a factor. But at the end of the day, he's also really tied to that initial press conference. The idea that if I want to make more money, I'll go drill an oil well.
Right.
There will be no financial constraints on the hockey department, where the sole purpose of the Sabres is win the Stanley Cup. All those big headline talking points have fallen so flat. And so I think that's another big part of it, is that you don't have to look far to be like, he's not holding up his end of the bargain. And it's easy to get frustrated with it as a result. So it's too bad, because as much as they got wrong and it just didn't go right for them early on there, the breath of fresh air that Pegula was when he took over from Golisano, because Golisano, those last like 3 years, let's say post Briere, when no one was getting extended, Campbell goes out, Miller left obviously under Pegula, but like that core started to dwindle. And there was never any indication that they were willing to spend big money to compete. They wanted to just stay in the middle, in the middle of the pack, and they were profitable. That was a breath of fresh air, because everyone thought like, oh, we got a big spending owner. We're finally going to go get the big free agents, the big ticket players. And, they tried it, didn't work out, and they led into the rebuild that's still ongoing. So
Do you
it's a lot of factors.
do you think or are you worried, I should say, that with the way he's spent, and you look at guys on this team right now that are going to be restricted free agents right now, like JJ Paterka and Byram and Ryan McLeod. And there's other guys who definitely won't cost as much, but like Jack Quinn and Bernard Docker, Devin Levi. Um, they're all restricted free agents. Are you concerned that, like, say if you take Paterka or McLeod, a guy that, you can make a case that maybe you trade Byram because you can make a hockey trade out of that. But with a guy like Paterka or McLeod, are you concerned about the way that with the team spending, or Alex Tuck, who's eligible for an extension on July 1st? Are you at all concerned with the way Terry Pegula has been with spending and cap money that the Sabres might decide to not try to keep one of those guys long term because of what it may cost?
So far, they've been pretty good about retaining their guys.
Sure.
Power, even Dylan Cousins.
Mhm.
They've certainly seemed to probably have learned their lesson from those contracts. Samuelson's probably the best example of it.
Sure.
So it wouldn't shock me if if and when he gets signed, if it's going to be more of a bridge. He's going to get 4 or 5 years
Mm.
versus 7 or 8 years. But that's not all bad. It's not a perfect solution, but there's pros and cons to the approach. I'm not too concerned that they're going to let Paterka walk or that they're going to let McLeod walk or anything like that. My bigger issue with their spending has been to supplement the roster. You look back like the Jason Zucker acquisition last year. What was the big talking point after is like it seems like they could use one more of those guys, and that would have been another 5-6 million bucks, and they ended the season with about $6 million in cap space. Go figure. So that's my bigger concern overall. I don't have a lot of fear that they're not going to retain guys, whether or not they get themselves into trouble 2-3 years from now. Because let's say you give Paterka a 3-year contract or a 4-year contract, and now he's walking into free agency. Maybe he wants to walk then, or he turns into a consistent 35 goal scorer, 40 goal scorer, and now instead of giving him like 7-8 million bucks this year, you're being talked into 9 or 10, 11 a few years down the road.
Yeah.
The cap will be up, of course, so the percentage will be similar, but you may find yourself getting trapped with some contract terms as a result of it. But
How much do you put now? Again, it is, look, man, hey, God, it's tough because again, I think Terry Pegula, for the most part, is a good football owner. On the hockey side, though, do we put maybe too much on? I'm trying to say this the right way. We put too much on him not spending, which obviously is very important in a big deal. But there's also a lot of reports going out there that the Sabres have tried to get guys to come here. You know what I mean? Like potential, I don't want to say GM candidates, or maybe they had GM candidates that we don't know about, but they weren't interested. And maybe that's part of the reason why Kevin Adams is still the GM. But we've heard about people joining the organization in front office roles that there were overtures to them and they just weren't interested. We know that there's a lot of players out there with no trade clauses that, the Sabres are probably on the very top or near the top of that list. Free agents, a tough sell for a lot of different types of free agents to come here. Like Jason Zucker was a good signing, but was anyone else going to pay him what the Sabres paid him last year? I feel like if they were, he probably doesn't sign with the Buffalo Sabres. You get what I'm saying? It's kind of like the Bills used to be during a drought. The only free agents the Bills would get would either be cast-offs from other teams who couldn't get better deals, or they would just grossly overpay somebody. That was the only way a football player wanted to come to Buffalo back in those days. I guess what I'm asking you is some of the problem with the Sabres things that are at least to an extent beyond his control, like the hockey things, like some of the things I just mentioned, like it's not, maybe he is trying more than we're giving him credit for, and it's just, they don't want to come here.
sure, if you go back 2 summers, they tried to get Brett Pesce,
Yeah.
right-handed defenseman, didn't want to waive. Last year, it sounds like they were after maybe Marty Nikash again, didn't want to waive. Well, he didn't have to waive, but he told virtually every team that if you want to pick me up, that's fine, but I'm only signing until I can go to free agency.
Mhm.
So that's hard to invest a big trade package in if you know you're going to lose the guy in 2 years. If he's effectively telling you, I want to go to free agency, I'm going to test the market. Maybe he wants to go to New York or Florida, wherever, LA, a bigger city, then you're going to lose him no matter what. So that, like, I don't blame them entirely for some of those situations. What I would say, though, to push back on that idea that maybe Pegula gets too much blame is that, the snake rots from the head down, right?
Yeah.
If he is the one setting the standard, he's the one who's involved in the operation of this team as much as some people think he is. I think there's a lot that then is related to his management of the hockey team. Now, to your point, like, I was just talking to someone about this the other day. Like, if you go back to like 20, was it 17, 18, like they go get Connor Sherry, even the Jeff Skinner trade, but like guys like Connor Sherry, where they were trying to get those veteran complementary players to help the Eichels and Reinhardts and the O'Reillys even, and just none of them worked. They just missed, and that'll happen too. But they've missed so much and so often that the team continued to suck, and now teams look at it, or players look at it and say, well, that's just not a place I really want to go. The weather's not great. It's not a great team. It's a small city, and so there's reasons to avoid the market. So I think there are certainly circumstances outside of Pagula's control that are affecting how they acquire players, and maybe even potentially acquire staff. I would also add, for what it's worth, if you're getting turned down, I know Dave Pagnotta reported that it was Lamoriello and Holland said no, thank you. There could be 800 reasons that they didn't want to do it. I would assume most of it has to do with them thinking they can still be a GM as opposed to a president or some other position.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's fair to question that if a senior advisor like a Lou Lamoriello or a Ken Holland, Jarmo Kekalainen, if those guys are looking at the Sabres job that's being offered and saying, well, we don't really know who's in charge here. And when I talk to other guys around the league, this Pegula guy is kind of a pain in the ass sometimes. Maybe then they're like, you know what, I'll wait to see if a GM job opens up. So I do think like there's some reason to believe that if they keep getting turned down by veteran hockey men, then maybe his reputation around the league's kind of crappy.
Sure.
But I don't want to jump to too many conclusions, of course. But I do think that's a fair assumption to make, because these guys talk. Jason Botterill was going to be retained, right? The famous, we have more information than the fans do. And then a week and a half, 2 weeks go by, and he's not going to fire all those guys, and now he's gone. So, maybe Botterill's out there saying like, no, it was a really tough time there, and Terry's really involved, and it's really hard to make deals because Terry wants to know everything that's going on. If that is the case, then yeah, I could see word spreading, and some execs being like, yeah, just be careful if you're going to Buffalo. It could be tricky.
As a result of, I don't know if it's money, I don't know if he actually still has belief in Kevyn Adams. I don't know if it's just other guys aren't interested in the job that maybe we don't even know about. But no matter what way you look at it, at the end of the day, Kevyn Adams is returning as general manager for a 6th season now, despite the fact that the Sabres have never finished higher in the standings than 20th in the league throughout his 5 years. From a PR and from a fan standpoint, you kind of feel like that's the last straw. Not even necessarily the last straw. That is the final. We're not giving you no more benefit of the doubt. Like, we don't believe you. We don't have faith in you. Winning will cure all. You could be mad at this team. I hate this team right now. If they're good in December, I'm going to come around. I might even start going to some games. You know what I'm saying. But right now, is Kevyn Adams returning the final straw with fans saying, you know what, I've had enough. I don't believe in this team. I don't have any faith. And just you got no benefit of the doubt with me anymore because you bring Kevyn Adams back for a 6th year.
I would have to think much of that opinion was held last summer, honestly.
Sure.
But you got 2 straight years of regression after that close call. I can't imagine anyone has any patience left going back to the, like the O'Reilly trade. I mean, people are probably just sick of watching this team from then, even let alone the last 2 years. So there's plenty of reason to think that fans are fed up with Kevin Adams. I go back to last year. They buy out Jeff Skinner, and he started talking about the fact that they needed to keep their cap flexibility because they had extensions coming up. You mentioned all the guys that they have to extend
Hmm.
from a restricted free agent perspective, and he was just lying to your face. The fact of the matter was Jeff Skinner's money was most valuable to them last summer.
Yeah.
They will incur penalties from there on out. They have less cap space this year than they did last year on account of how the buyout factors in. None of the money they saved last year when they bought out Skinner would have been able to be used for these extensions. Now, future cap flexibility, yes, they did need to be cognizant of it. But
Hmm.
in terms of being all in last year, you left the money sit and now you lost it. So that alone, and maybe he's covering for his boss. Maybe Pegula's like, no, we got to save some cash, like we did the last 5 years. Um, but yeah, like if aside from that doofus Alex Jones on Twitter, I don't think anyone defends the guy anymore. I think he's got one defender left, and it's a guy with a Josh Allen avatar.
That's fun. Accurate too. What are your thoughts on Eric Stahl being named special assistant to the general manager? Like, what the hell's the point of adding special to it, by the way? What is it, assistant to the general manager or assistant GM, whatever you want to call it, but special assistant to the general manager just sounds dumb. The definition was Stahl will assist in all aspects of the hockey department, including scouting and direct involvement with players and prospects. You wrote about this in Two in the Box. What are your thoughts on the Stahl addition? What, if anything, he's going to bring to the team in terms of value? And is this something that you're on board with?
Overall, I think it's fine. It's a throwaway title. They could have named him any number of
Yeah.
things, player development you advisor or whatever. It's a position that Jason Spezza took in Toronto, a similar position that Roberto Luongo has in Florida. I think
Hmm.
there's a handful of other ex-players around the NHL who are doing this. I think Fairburn and Baker mentioned like Rich Peverly, I think, is doing something along these lines. And I wrote about this in the blog, but the general idea I think is that these guys who want to work in the league, they retire, they're not sure what they're going to do, and they say, well, maybe I want to do some executive work, I want to go be a GM or something like that. It's their way to get their foot in the door. I mean, they could have called him front office intern for all I care, and
Right.
he still could have done all the work, right? So my takeaway from this is that it's a fine hire on the surface. There's some sour feelings about hiring him from a fan perspective. From whether it be 2006, he kind of made an ass of himself with the Pride jersey thing a few years ago
Yep.
because he said he never wore one. There's a photo of him wearing it. Like, but let's just be honest, right? So like, there's some stuff like that where it's just from a PR perspective, people are gonna bitch about it, and some of it I think is deserved. But from a pure hockey perspective, if you wanted Kyle Okposo to work in the front office, what's the difference hiring Eric Stahl? They both played over 1,000 games. They've seen a lot of hockey. They've they've had a good long veteran career. He'll be able to lend some value to this front office. And it's such a small role, it shouldn't be a big deal. The bigger issue is going to be if they can't find a senior advisor or president or whatever they decide to call that position. That's when I think you got to maybe raise a red flag and be like, oh, like the only thing you did was add your old buddy from Carolina. Then it starts to get to the point of like, God, he's like, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
So that's where I'd get worried, is if they can't find, or they opt not to add the experienced voice like next to or above or whatever for Adams.
What what's going on with Seth Appert? What's going on? What's up with that right now? Yeah, they get a promotion. What do we do? What's going on with Seth Appert?
I do think there's probably a misconception to the report that came out last week. I don't think he's going to go and be like an assistant GM. I get the impression that, like you saw with Ruff in the embedded, for anyone who watched the trade deadline embedded video,
Mhm.
Ruff was right there next to Adams. He's like, we need to change our culture. He was lending his opinion on the Josh Norris acquisition. And so I think it's going to be like that, where they want a lot of voices in the room. They want a lot of opinions. And so they've already let Lindy share his thoughts on roster management and how they want to shape acquisitions. And I think they're going to lean on Appert similarly. Does he deserve to do that job? No. He's doesn't strike me that he's done a good job really with anything so far. So that's concerning. But in terms of what they're going to be asking him to do, I don't think it's too far outside of the usual duties that you might have, or a relationship that you might have between the general manager and coaching staff. But it is concerning that they didn't look at the power play's performance. They didn't look at how things operated in Rochester when he was there, and now with Leone there, and to say like, oh, maybe this guy doesn't really have a magic wand as a coach, and maybe they would want to take fewer pieces of advice from him. I'm a little worried about that piece of it. I'd be worried about what this means for his long-term future here. But I think Chad was it who reported that like most of these contracts are expected to be up next year.
Mhm.
And if that's the case and they suck, I would be amazed if anyone was retained. So maybe Pegula's just going to let the clock run out on the contracts. But if they win, then we're having a different conversation. But yeah, the Appert thing though, it's so frustrating because he did such a shitty job with the power play,
Yeah.
and to give him more power as a result of not doing his day job, it would be a concern to me.
What's almost funny, and it's just so Sabery, is that during the draft lottery, we just had to laugh at that. Like the Sabres actually fall 2 spots in the lottery, and statistically, they had a better chance of winning the lottery than they did falling down 2 spots. I think they had a 6.5% chance of winning the lottery and only a 5.6% chance of dropping 2 spots, and they end up dropping 2 spots. Last question, then I'm going to let you go. I appreciate your time as always here. Without naming specifics, we're getting to that point right now. They may or may not hire someone alongside or above Kevin Adams, depending on what you want to call that title. Free agency will be coming up relatively soon. Trades, of course, possibilities, draft, all the stuff coming up. How do you anticipate the summer going with the Buffalo Sabres? You don't have to get specific in terms of what they, players that they might have, whatever, but just an overall sense of what do you feel? Do you feel like there's going to be a lot of change, or do you feel like you just talked about a few minutes earlier that maybe they're just going to see what happens this year and wipe it clean after that? I don't know. What's your sense for what's coming up this offseason?
I have to think they're going to move a couple guys,
Mm.
and maybe that might not make everyone super happy if they only move out 2, maybe 3 guys. But if you look at their roster right now, you go to Puckpedia, look at a depth chart. If they're fully healthy, they've got a full slate of players. They've got 7 or 8 D. They've got 13, 14 forwards.
Mhm.
Like the goaltending, if they brought Levi up, they'd have a full roster. They could, in theory, run it back with Levi as the only notable change. And so even as much as Kevin Adams has been frustrating as a general manager, he has made some trades that I've looked at and said, like, that's a pretty good move. The Ryan McLeod move, front and center, right? So I would have to think even the worst general manager in hockey wouldn't have 2 years of regression and then let his roster run back the same for the third year. So I would be pretty confident that they're going to move 1 or 2 guys. I think they'll be pretty serious about the power partner thing this summer. So I'm expecting 2 or 3 moves. How great of magnitude those trades are, I don't know yet. I don't want to make any. I don't want to overpromise.
Right.
But I got my fingers crossed for one like notable trade. Maybe not a blockbuster, but like a fairly significant one.
You got to figure, man, even if Kevin Adams happens just, I don't know, that he has something on Terry Pegula or whatever it is that's got him back here, even he's got to know it's now or never. It's this year or never. He knows that he's GMing for his job. So I would think, anyway, anything he could do to help this hockey team win now, it's going to be now, because he ain't going to get enough. I shouldn't say that, because you never know with Terry Pegula in this organization. I cannot possibly expect him to get another year if it doesn't work out this season. We'll track it. It's going to be a lot of, I was going to say it's going to be a lot of fun. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know if it's going to be a lot of fun. So I usually say that with the Bills. I don't know about that on the Sabres side, but thank you very much. As always, Chris Ostrander. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at 2ITB_. Do I got that right? At Buffalo. I'll put a link to all that stuff in the show notes too. 2 in the Box, great blog. Of course, the Instigator podcast as well, man. Appreciate you as always, buddy. Thank you very much,
Thanks
man.
a lot.
All right, guys, and I will be back tomorrow. Matt Warren from SB Nation joins me. Talk to you then.